Mashup Music Theory. Part 1. Mashing up parts. I play bass in a band with no chordal instruments, just two reeds, bass, and drums. We play covers, originals, and mashups. When we're playing music that was originally written with one or more chordal instruments, keyboards or guitar, we need to decide how to represent the harmonic structure of the music. Our options are 1. Leave it more spare and open. 2. Create a counter melody line in one of the saxes based on the chordal part. Or 3. Make the bass do the heavy lifting. I'll be honest, I'm rarely adventurous enough to try number 3. While I don't really get stage fright per se, I do tend to psych myself out when the pressure is on, either on stage or when that red record light is lit, so I try to make things easier on myself. But here's an example where I just had to push myself a bit. We're playing Angela, theme from Taxi, by Bob James. On the original, the quasi-classical intro is played on recorder, electric piano, and bass. The bass is just laying down half notes, while the electric piano is filling in the harmony with arpeggios. Well, chords are generally not so great on the bass, but I can do arpeggios. So I decided, for the first 8 bars of the song, to write a new bass part that combines elements of both the original bass and the electric piano parts. It's not an exact transcription of the electric piano part to bass, because that really doesn't suit the instrument, but I feel like it captures the spirit. The trick is the use of tenths. I learned this trick from the bass lines of a couple of classic jazz tunes, Wayne Shorter's Footprints with bass by Reggie Workman, and Joe Henderson's Blue Bossa with bass by Butch Warren. You can get a minor tenth, a minor third up an octave, by playing the same fret on the E and G strings. A major tenth is just 1 fret higher on the G string. It sits very nicely under the left hand on the bass, and that octave jump helps both notes to sound clearly. Playing an interval as close as a third on the lower strings of the bass tends to sound muddy and indistinct. So here's my bass intro for Angela. It creates a nice counterpoint with our flute player on the main melody. I varied the rhythm to mimic the casual flow of the electric piano part, rather than rigidly playing steady 8th note arpeggios. The 4th and 8th measures are just the original bass line, as I have the alto sax coming in and playing the counter melody line in those spots. Part 2, the mashup secret sauce, common chord progressions. My band plays at least 1 or 2 mashups at every gig, because they provide some unexpected fun for the audience, and because they're a great way to both show the breadth of our collective musical tastes, and also to diffuse some of the self-seriousness that can sometimes come with jazz. It's fun to mash up songs that have stylistic similarities, but it's even more fun to mash up songs that seem radically different from each other, and that's something we can do when they share a similar chord progression. This mashup works because, despite the extreme stylistic differences between the smooth jazz of Bob James and the brash pop-punk of Green Day, the songs share a nearly identical chord progression. But it's not just Angela and Brain Stew. A lot of songs, especially from the late 1960s and early 1970s, use this progression or a variation of it. Here's the basic pattern. We're in a minor key, with the exception of Brain Stew, but I'll get to that. The progression is mostly diatonic, moving to the major 3 chord. We'll skip the 3rd bar for a moment. The last bar takes us to the major 6 chord, resolving down a half step to the major 5. In natural minor, the 5 would be a minor as well, but it's very common in traditional Western music to make the 5 major when playing in a minor key, which introduces the raised 7th. So now we're essentially in harmonic minor. All of this is pretty conventional Western harmony, but let's talk about that 3rd bar. Well, first let's talk about the bass line. Those little digits indicate these chords are inverted. We're playing the 3 chord in 2nd inversion with the 5th in the bass, and the 4 chord in 1st inversion with the 3rd in the bass. This is because I believe that progression is really driven by that descending bass line. Other than the first jump of a major 2nd, the rest of the bass line is descending chromatically. It creates a sense of perpetually falling throughout the song. The chromatic movement creates tension. And if you look at the lyrical content of most of these songs, that tense, unsettled falling sensation fits perfectly. As for the functional harmonic role of the third bar, honestly, I just believe it's there to feed the tension of the overall progression. It's generally played as an extended chord. Most of the songs that use it play it as a dominant ninth chord, or at least a seventh. And it's in first inversion. It's a bit of a stretch to even try to use traditional Western harmonic analysis on it. It feels to me like the peak of the tension, as the last bar accelerates the harmonic rhythm into the turnaround back to the root. But all of this analysis is missing the key tension in the progression. While the bass line descends chromatically, the minor third and fifth carry through every chord except the final 5 chord. We can see this if we look at the song I think is the purest expression of this structure, 25 or 6-4 by Chicago. Here we really feel the ebb and flow of the progression, from a simple A minor triad, building to that tense D9 over F sharp, before settling back down to a simple 5 chord that resolves back to the root. Brain Stew is the only one of these songs that isn't in a minor key, but it's ambiguous. The melody is sung in A-flat major, but the guitar is only playing power chords. No third, no clear major or minor tonality. But since Brain Stew is only using power chords, that means you can put a melody over it that is either major or minor. So the minor key melody of Angela works just fine in a mashup. You just can't really play both of the melodies at the same time. Angela and While My Guitar Gently Weeps both deviate from the progression in that they are an 8-bar structure rather than 4 bars. They're really pairs of 4-bar substructures with slight variations, but overall, the falling sensation is still the key. So what did the tension of the chords and the falling bass line in Angela mean? Since it's an instrumental, we don't really know who Angela is or how the performer feels about her. The song definitely has a melancholy feeling, though, which always felt right at home for me as the theme song to a 70s sitcom about taxi drivers in New York. The arrangement is sophisticated and light, but the underlying structure is sad and even a bit ominous. As for Brain Stew, there's not really much ambiguity there. And yet, as our narrator is singing about the physical distress of a bad drug trip, he's singing in a major key. He's definitely not happy, but he kind of sounds like he is. Anyway, there's one last question to address. How does one solo over these changes? I'll admit, I'm not a brilliant jazz soloist, so I took the cop-out. My alto sax solo here is just playing over a minor pentatonic scale that works nicely with all of the chords in the progression. It really plays up that minor third and fifth from the root, carrying through all of the chords. And ultimately, it fittingly connects this progression with the blues, even though it's nothing like a standard blues form. On my own, here we go.